Yo, my dogs! I'm never gonna say that again. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Tommy the Boy, and today we're gonna react to the sponge virus infection AU because I'm bored.
You guys have been asking me to cover the SpongeBob pandemic, or aka the sponge virus, created by My Shirique, I believe is how you say it. And it actually took me a while to do this one because I had to translate the second half of the series. But now that I've actually finished that, I will admit that this AU is pretty good. Now, to understand what's going on in this AU, we're going to have to start from episode 13, which actually shows us how this whole pandemic started. We see SpongeBob starts his day by saying good morning to the sun, brushes his teeth, and then heads out to start his day, thinking that there's nothing that can ruin this beautiful morning. But then he runs into Sandy, who asks him if he would like to be a test subject in an experiment that she's running.
No, thank
she
you.
then takes SpongeBob back to her home and has 3 items on the table. One of those is chum, the other is a Krabby Patty, and then this thing in the middle is like some type of combination of the two. And it seems that this is what Sandy has been working on or experimenting on. She basically wanted to develop a way to make chum more edible for the citizens of Bikini Bottom. And while we don't know exactly why she wants to do this, we do know that chum is like the remains of dead fish ground up. So off rip, this experiment is kind of gross and definitely unethical. But since SpongeBob trusts his friend, he takes a bite of this new meat. And moving over to chapter 1, we can see just how that turned out for him. We see here that not only does SpongeBob get some crazy virus that is eating away at his flesh, and he also has these weird parasites or fungus growing out of him, but he also dies because of it. We also see that Patrick has gotten infected as well, and it seems like he came into contact with SpongeBob's body, and that was enough to infect him. And now I really understand why the creator gave the trypophobia warning, which is the fear of irregular holes. After that, we see that Mr. Krabs is also missing, leaving behind an empty shell, which means that he is possibly still alive, but we'll have to wait and see about him. Now in episode 2, we see that Sandy's virus is really starting to spread, and some of the infected fish are outside of her home. And while it looks like Sandy is trying to find a cure, she isn't having any luck as of right now. And then we get this image of Squidward giving this 1,000-yard stare.
Why
are we still here?
I don't know.
And the reason that he's looking so pitiful is because he's looking out at a whole horde of infected, and they are slowly making their way to Sandy's dome. And I think he knows that once they start pounding on that glass, they are going to be able to get in, and that's going to put the crew in serious danger.
I see Larry.
After that, we get a quick scene with Gary looking at a picture of him and SpongeBob, and he's crying because of the loss of his friend, but also because it looks like he's also infected. And judging by how he's looking, I'm assuming that he's on his last legs. Can we get a rip in the chat for Gary? I feel like this little guy did not deserve to go out like this.
He didn't deserve that.
In part 4, we see more people have been infected, starting with Mrs. Puff. While it was hard to tell, she was actually a part of the horde of fish that were heading towards Sandy's home. And based on what I'm reading here, it looks like I was right when I said that the infected were going to break through Sandy's dome. But it seems like Miss Puff was actually taken out by Larry during the attack, because if you didn't notice, he was actually hiding out in the dome as well. We also see that Plankton is still alive, and of course, he's created like a exosuit. And honestly, I think as long as this guy stays alive, Bikini Bottom, at the very least, will have a chance at beating this infection. Because, of course, Plankton is one of the smartest people in the series, and he also has the tech to put up a fight. Next, we see Doodlebob, and not only has he avoided the infection, but he also has started like a rebellion against King Neptune, and actually managed to overthrow him and become the new king of the sea. And while at first I was surprised by this, I then took a second and remembered that Doodlebob is kind of OP. He literally has super strength, stamina, and was almost invincible, with his only weakness being either paper or the eraser on that magic pencil. And since he's actually holding the magic pencil in his AU, he also has the ability to just straight up erase people, as we saw him do like with SpongeBob's butt crack. And he can also create anything that he can draw. So all in all, I suppose he is a pretty powerful foe, and we never know. He may have had allies helping him as well. In the next chapter, we see Sandy and Squidward looking down at Sandy's destroyed home, and Sandy gets a message from Plankton telling her to go to the chum bucket because he may have a cure, or at least be on the road to one. They then have a small moment where Plankton asks Sandy what's wrong, and she tells him that her home has been destroyed. And Plankton simply says, cry about it. Honestly, I feel like that was the correct response, considering that she is the reason that they're in this mess to begin with. Now, after their talk, we cut over to Plankton, and you see that he actually has Mr. Krabs chained up in the chum bucket, and he says, best friends always help each other, right? And as of now, I think that Plankton is trying to keep Krabs contained until he can find a cure for him. Because while Plankton is usually seen as like a bad character, whenever there's like a crisis like this, he usually steps up and he's trying to help people, so I'm not surprised.
Guys, remind me.
Now, in the next chapter, we see Larry, and it seems like he ended up getting separated from Sandy and Squidward.
Oh.
And as he's walking down the street, he sees Squilliam is infected and moving towards him. And since Larry has had one of his arms either cut off or ripped off, he uses it as a weapon and cracks William upside the head. And can we just take a moment to appreciate how tough you have to be to beat a person against the head with your own severed arm? I really hope that Larry actually survives in this AU, but this next moment, we actually see this car arrive that has Doodlebob and his minions riding it, so it's not looking great for him. But as of right now, it seems like they just take Larry as a hostage instead of just outright taking him out. Now, after that, we get to see that the sponge virus has finally made it to the news, and the newscaster Fish breaks down the stages of the virus. Stage 1 is pretty tame, with people just feeling a bit more tired than usual. Stage 2 is where the skin of the fish actually starts to dry out and wrinkle up, as if like all the moisture has been sucked out of their body. And then in the final stage, this is where the holes start to appear on their body, and this is where they get this monstrous look about them.
Oh god. What? His leg broke. My leg!
We also learn that this is where their bones become really weak, which is why we see Fred's leg breaks here. I also find it kind of ironic that it was his leg that broke first, because Fred is known for this famous line. In episode 8, we get to see that Larry was indeed captured, and we even see that Bubble Bass has not only survived, but is actually like a knight in Doodlebob's new kingdom. And as Larry has been taken down to the dungeons, he asks Doodlebob how he was able to take down King Neptune by himself, and it turns out that he didn't. We see that he had help from SpongeBob, who is from the episode where they discover fire. Toy Bob is next, and he's from the SpongeBob Christmas movie.
Christmas special. Oh my. What the heck? Santa.
Then we have Abrasive Bob from the episode called Abrasive Side, and then of course their leader, Doodlebob. And it seems like Doodlebob wants Larry to be his slave, and I'm hoping that Larry ends up fighting them, even if it's definitely going to end in his defeat. I'd rather see him go out in a blaze of glory than to be like chained up.
Yeah, like those birds.
Next, we see episode 9, and this is where Sandy and Squidward make it back to the Krusty Krab. And it's kind of funny to see that Squidward is missing his old life as a cashier. But the reason that they actually come back here is to see if there's any food left that they can salvage.
What the heck is
and it seems while they're looking around, someone is watching them, and I assume that it was Patrick, since the character has like this pinkish color about them. And then we get confirmation of this when we see a flashback where Sandy and SpongeBob are talking, and they see Patrick laying on top of his house. And while we can't actually make out what Sandy is saying, because it's just a bunch of numbers, we can assume that this is when she asked SpongeBob to come be a part of her experiment.
Probably.
She probably asked Patrick to join as well, but he ended up denying her.
Good.
And then we see this scene.
Oh my god, bro, what did they do to you? Oh my god!
It seems like Patrick has finally remembered that Sandy is the reason that everyone is infected, and he has gone into a complete rage. We see that he actually tries to eat both Squidward and Sandy, but luckily Plankton pulls up in his mech. Honestly, I thought that he was going to give Patrick a run for his money. But in the very next chapter, we see that Plankton's mech has been defeated, and now both he and Squidward are in Patrick's grasp. And right when it looks like Patrick is about to devour them both, we hear SpongeBob laughing in the distance, which causes Patrick to drop them, but before they hit the ground, they're caught by the dirty bubble. We also see Mr. Krabs pop up again, and it seems like he's been kind of like lured in by SpongeBob's laughter as well. But as he's leaving, Plankton has this heart-wrenching moment where he's trying to get Krabs to remember who he is, trying to get him to remember his daughter and the life that they built together. Although part of this beautiful moment is interrupted by Squidward's dump truck. Right,
double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella ass.
After that, we see a bunch of infected are actually heading towards SpongeBob's house, as if his laughter is somehow controlling them. And then we see him looking as if he's grown into the wall of his bedroom with a creepy smile on his face. While all that was happening, we see that down in Doodlebob's dungeon, there are fish here having to fight for their lives against regular infected, and also these giant infected fish like frog monsters that are ripping people in half.
Oh my god!
And then we see Abrasive Bob walking over to the cell that is holding King Neptune.
Put this on for
and forgive me if some of my translations are off. I'm not Russian, but I think he's basically just mocking Neptune here, saying, "Look who we have here, the king of the sea, looking pathetic in this cage. Honestly, you look like you lost your kingdom." Which is him obviously being sarcastic, since we know that he actually helped Doodlebob defeat him. Then he goes on to say, "You've been locked up, humiliated, and now you're forced to listen to me, a handsome guy in a gorgeous coat." And while all this boasting is happening, it looks like some kind of witch is looking in on Neptune with her crystal ball.
What the hell?
And then we see someone say, "I will save you, Father." At first, I assumed that this was going to be his daughter, Princess Mindy, but this is definitely a male space here.
Right there.
And then I remember that he also has a son named Triton, and I'm pretty sure he started out as an antagonist, but eventually he became like really close with his father. So it's possible that Triton is going to try to save his father, and with the two of them working together, I think they will be able to take down Doodlebob and his goons, at least as of right now. Now, chapter 12 is really short, and it just shows Barnacle Boy sitting against this wall holding a shotty, and he says, "Things were better before." And judging by the fact that he's looking at Mermaid Man, who is obviously infected and has lost his iconic starfish mask, I assume that he's talking to him, and then we see this scene. It's kind of sad that two of the biggest heroes in the SpongeBob verse had to go out like this, but if we're being honest, the two of them are way too old to be able to survive a zombie outbreak. So while it is sad, Barnacle Boy probably made the right choice here. Put down in the comments what you think. Did Barnacle Boy actually make the right choice, or should he have tried to survive? Next we get to episode 14, and it starts with Sandy and Squidward trying to keep the infected from breaking into the chum bucket. And they were doing okay until one of the infected got a hold of Sandy's tail and ripped that thing off. And judging by her face here, she knew she was in trouble.
I'm in danger!
And without her to help hold the door, the infected are able to break in, and the crew is cornered. But right when it looks like it was over for them, we swap over to Patrick, who is back to his normal self. And he takes a deep breath, lifts his arm, and prepares to do some kind of karate move. Or at least that's what it says here in Chinese. He then strikes out and slices not only the infected, but the whole building and even the man ray. He basically becomes Sukuna for a second.
You can see
Oh, I don't watch
Finally,
anime,
we get to episode 15, and we get to see the destruction that Patrick caused, although he doesn't seem too sad about taking out Man Ray. But then we see Squidward come to yell at him, saying, "You idiot, Patrick, you killed Man Ray." And he also says what the rest of us are thinking, which is, how did Patrick go from a giant infected monster back to his normal self? And this is where I need a Russian person to help me with the translation. Because I think Patrick says, like a fried chicken, a starfish can be reborn from his ashes.
What?
And I'm thinking maybe he meant to say like a phoenix, but I honestly don't know. Patrick is kind of dumb, so the translation could be correct. After that, we see Toy Bob burning the heck out of something, saying that all the children will burn in hell. And then we see Doodle Bob watching for a bit, until he says, "That's enough, Toy Bob." And then we see that he has fused the magic pencil in Poseidon's trident to make a new, even deadlier weapon. And when he sees it, he says that it's perfect. And with this new power, I may have been wrong to say that Triton would be able to save his dad. I think he is definitely going to need some backup now. The last scene shows SpongeBob talking with Mr. Krabs, but I can't make out what they're actually saying to each other. And also, I wasn't able to crack this code here. Even when I let AI look at it, it wasn't able to figure out anything. But in the description of the original video, there was a paragraph in Russian that actually translates out to a conversation between Krabs and SpongeBob, where Krabs was trying to explain to SpongeBob that he has infected a ton of people and now they're out of control. And also, the rest of Bikini Bottom is now in danger because of that. But SpongeBob in this new infected form doesn't seem to understand and simply says that he wants to infect more people so that he has more friends. And while it's hard to say for sure, I'm thinking that this is probably the conversation that these two are having here because it just makes sense. I'm interested to see how this AU will continue moving forward because it seems like Squidward, Patrick, Sandy, and Plankton are the only people clean of the infection and not like in Doodle Bob's dungeon. But most of them are either injured or in Plankton's case without any high-tech gear. And while Patrick may have this newfound power, I don't think he's going to be able to win against Doodlebob just with that. What I suspect is that Crab may be able to convince SpongeBob to use some of the infected to help fight against Doodlebob, since we see that SpongeBob seems to have some type of control over the infected. And the reason that I say this is because you remember in one of the chapters, SpongeBob Laughter was able to actually draw a bunch of the infected to him. And I think since he was the first person to be infected, that they're probably connected to him in some way. But as of right now, that's just my theory, and as more...
Well, guys, that was pretty fun. And I think my childhood's ruined. Bye.